Hi, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining our webinar on CEP implementation and breakfast model alternatives. My name is Danette Martin, the Central Florida Program Coordinator for Florida Impact, and I will be your hostess for the next hour. With the support of FRAC, Food Research and Action Center, and the Walmart Foundation, Florida Impact and OCPS Food Nutrition Services have united to bring you highlights and best practices of CEP success in the Orange County School District of Central Florida. Today's schedule of presenters will go as follows: a live session with the FNS Director Mark Watson and FNS Area Manager Javier Vasquez, an interview with Principal Wendy Ivory, Delvin, Everett, and Jennifer Schmidt of Orange County's premier Academic Center for Excellence K-8 school, followed by Linworth Brown on best practices for increasing breakfast participation. We will end the webinar with Q&A, where you will be asked to type your questions into the chat box. This webinar will be recorded for your viewing pleasure at a later date. More information to follow at the end of the webinar. Now, without further ado, let's get started with a little information about Florida Impact.
Since 1979, Florida Impact has been dedicated to securing economic justice in Florida by reducing hunger and poverty. We mobilize communities to increase access to federal food, nutrition, and other economic support programs. We work strategically and collaboratively to address childhood hunger by effectively surrounding children with nutritious food wherever they live, learn, and play. We enhance our prospects for success by removing barriers and increasing access to these programs at the federal, state, and community levels. There is a direct correlation between health and hunger in both adults and children. Lack of a nutritious, balanced diet can lead to increased risk for obesity and other diet-related chronic diseases. It can have serious implications on physical health, mental health, academic achievement, and future economic prosperity. Increased risk of behavioral problems like hyperactivity, anxiety, depression, and aggression, just to name a few. That's why Florida Impact's priorities are school breakfast programs, after-school meals, and summer food service programs. Now join me in welcoming our first presenters, Mark Watson, Food Nutrition Services Director, and Javier Vasquez, Food Nutrition Services Senior Administrator of Information Technology, Construction and Maintenance, and Meal Benefit. Let's dive right into our first question. What exactly is CEP?
CEP is a nonprofit meal service option for schools and school districts in low-income areas. It allows breakfast and lunch to be served at no cost to all enrolled students. It eliminates the burden of collecting household applications to determine eligibility of students. Schools are reimbursed using a formula based on the percentage of students categorically eligible for free meals based on their participation in other programs such as SNAP and TANF, or as defined as directly certified. Who benefits? Everyone does. Students access to meals at no charge. There's no stigma. Less time spent in the cashier lines. More time for students to consume their food. School staff streamline meal service operation. Administrators, it reduces the paperwork, administrative costs, no need to track unpaid meal charges, and it improves the program. So who can participate in CEP program? Individual schools, school groups, and school districts. School and school districts with a minimum identified school percentage of 40% or less in the prior school year. Identified students are those eligible for free meals based on participation in other programs such as SNAP and TANF. This also includes children who are in foster care, homeless, or migrant students. How are the schools reimbursed? Federal reimbursement are based on the portion of low-income students in the schools. The identified students' percentage is multiplied by 1.6 to calculate the percentage of meals reimbursed at the federal free rate. and the remainder are reimbursed at a lower paid rate. For example, a school with 50% identified students will be reimbursed for 80% of meals eaten at free rate, which is 50 times 1.6 at 80, and the 20% that's remaining will be the paid rate. Other benefits: it improves the overall financial viability of the school nutrition program. When participation increases, school districts can take advantage of the economic scales and reinvest additional revenue. Makes it easier to implement innovative services models for breakfast in the classroom, the grab and go, and breakfast after the bell.
Thank you, Javier. Our next question: please describe the demographics of your school district just to give an idea of size and poverty level.
Well, our school district here at Orange County Public Schools, our enrollment is about 191,000 students. We had a 74% free and reduced rate. 58% of our students are non-Hispanic.
Thank you. Next question: how many schools does Orange County have participating in CEP? How many of those schools were added this year?
We have a total of 102 schools in CEP. 92 were added in FY18, and we're planning on adding 11 more schools for FY19.
How were schools chosen to participate in CEP, and what type of data did you rely on?
We chose the schools with an ISP meeting the district's Title I criteria of 54% of students' populations that were identified as directly certified. We used data from state DC file, we used district homeless file, district foster file, and the district migrant file.
Why did your district decide to undertake such a large expansion of CEP?
So we found out this way that if we have a CEP program, when we take away the barriers, then kids will eat. Example is we had a portion of time where we had a hurricane here in Florida, and every kid ate at no charge, and we found that when every kid ate at no charge, that our participation rate increased dramatically. So with the CEP program, it's basically the same as when we had the hurricane. Everybody ate at no charge. So that gave the students a chance to eat without having that stigma of having free or reduced on their names.
So, with CEP, does the entire district need to participate?
No. I'll let Javier talk a little bit about that, how he determines that.
No, to the most part, what we did was we partnered with our Title I department and made sure that from a district standpoint of view, we had schools that will participate in both of the programs, and that's how we started our program here in OCPS.
So, what type of accountability do you have for meal participation and keeping count of who is eating at participating CEP schools?
In the schools, we have a controlled environment, and we take off all the students as they're coming through. We ensure that none of the students, as they're being ticked off, have the access to come back through the line.
Do you collect any income data from students and parents?
No, we don't collect the data. No income data. The only data we use is the direct certification data.
How often do schools have to be recertified for CEP?
CEP is good for 4 years. The way the program has been identified for us is depending on how their percentage goes. Every year, we submit the data up to the DOA, and if you're doing individual basis, if your DC improves within those 4 years, you can always use that greater number. But if you're grouping, and in our case, all the schools were at 100%, so having to monitor that on a yearly basis really didn't impact us. But for the schools that are doing school by school base and have schools that may have a lower ISP, they always could keep the highest DC count within those 4 years. If the DC drops in those 4 years less than the prior year, then they could stay on that prior year.
Okay. Is the program sustainable financially?
Yes, it is. It has been very beneficial for the schools. It has helped us in not only providing hot meals for breakfast, but providing meals that the students have accepted. We've been able to bring in meals that the students have selected. We have a food show and we have taste testings that the students select. If it meets our criteria of 80% or greater, we bring in those items in for the students to then be served.
Can you explain what the district uses to determine Title I eligibility and any other funding that was dependent on the FRP application?
The district, like I said before, the district actually partnered with us and they decided to use direct certification data only. And they, last year they were at 54%. This year they have changed that percentage, but it doesn't impact the schools that we have in CEP.
How does the reimbursement differ from NSLP?
The participation.
The reimbursement?
Well, in our case, the way we grouped all our schools, our reimbursement came out to be at 100% for the schools that are participating in our CEP program, versus in the past, it would be broken down by free, reduced, and paid based on the students that were coming through the line.
How does Title I affect CEP?
Title I technically doesn't impact CEP. It's more of the other way around. CEP impacts Title I.
How so?
Because we're no longer collecting applications at the schools, then Title I has to be in agreement with how food service may operate. And that's why what we did, we partnered and we agreed that Title I would use the direct certification data, and they decided they will use all the low income schools. Those would be the ones that will qualify for Title I funding. And those were the schools that we defined would be CEP.
So does everyone at the school eat meals at no charge under CEP, breakfast and lunch?
Yes, so the schools that are participating in CEP, we're offering breakfast, lunch, and in most cases, we're even offering snack and supper.
Suppose a school does not have Title I or CEP status. What other options are there for them?
We do have some other options that are available. Schools have the option of doing a universal breakfast or a universal lunch. There is a provision too, but that's all based on how the district determines what that qualification may be for their programs.
When you began implementing CEP, did you meet with any resistance at the school level, either from the school administration or from your own staff? And if so, how have you been able to overcome that resistance?
Well, we haven't found a resistance from the kids eating in no charge from the administration. They were all gun ho for that. They wanted to make sure that all their kids had a chance to eat a nutritional meal, a couple of nutritional meals a day. But you did come to some resistance with Title I, and Javier talked a little bit about that.
In the beginning, it was important to meet with Title I to help understand how critical it was using the direct certification data versus using the application data. Title I has to provide a service not just for the schools that fall under our umbrella, but for the schools throughout the whole district. And it was easier to share how, from an audit standpoint of view, the DC data was coming from the state versus the application where we validate or verify 3% of those applications that are submitted to us.
What do you view as the most successful methods for increasing meal participation at a CEP school, i.e., grab and go cards, breakfast after the bell, breakfast in the classroom, etc.?
Well, Well, first thing is marketing. You have to market your CEP program to make sure that you inundate the schools and the parents with communications about what CEP is, what benefits it brings to their students at the school, their child. Then you make sure that the meals that the students, that you make sure you take the meals to the students. Don't just keep it in the cafeteria. You have to take it out to the bus loop, to the car drop off, to the courtyards, and in some cases to the classrooms. So you have to make sure that the kids have a chance to eat it. So, because in our schools here in Orange County, it's multiple interests. So we have to make sure that each of those interests, we have a place where the student can get a nutritional meal before they go to school. And during lunch, we just make sure everybody goes through the line to make sure if they want a meal, they're able to get one. And with all of it being a no charge and no barriers in front of them or stigmatisms on them, they can go out and just enjoy their meal.
Did you learn anything from your CEP project that you would advise other school districts to try or not to try in terms of your strategy for implementation?
Definitely visit a district that is implementing CEP, um, not just from a food service standpoint of view, but if you're reaching out to a district, it's important to take all your key stakeholders. Title I going out, even some district administrators going out to some of the other districts to hear and share that valuable information, because it may be that food service may have one set of questions, but Title I may have another set of questions. So it's important to have all of them part of meeting and going out to other districts. Other recommendations is definitely get with your DOA representative and review the data. That way you have a better and a clear understanding of what that school is going to get into for the next 4 years when they start their program.
Also, you make sure you get a CEP guru like we did with Javier, somebody who knows the CEP process in and out, so you won't take on more than you have to or you need to make the program successful. You need to have somebody who's spearheading it, who researches it, and knows the ins and outs of the program.
It's a commitment. You really have to commit to taking every webinar that is being offered from the DOA, from the USDA, and making sure you have all your questions answered, participating as much, reaching out to other districts that have started it. There's always a lesson learned, and it's important to keep track of what those lessons learned so that when you start the program in your district, there's a lot of hurdles that you're going to avoid.
Okay, thank you both for sharing. I'm going to ask that you stick around to answer a few questions from our listeners at the end.
Up next, we have a previously recorded video from Principal Wendy Ivory, FNS Operation Manager Delvin Everett, and FNS Lead Jennifer Schmidt of ACE, the Academic Center for Excellence K-8 school. The second portion of the video was recorded in the cafeteria, so you may experience background noises during viewing. Enjoy.
My name is Wendy Ivory. I'm principal at OCPS ACE, which is off of Paramore. It's a part of Orange County Public Schools. The school that I am at has 1,100 kids. We serve them daily breakfast, lunch, and supper for those that stay after school. We are in one of the most impoverished areas of Orlando, here off of Paramore, Livingston, and Amelia. We have, like I said, about 1,100 kids. They are 100% free and reduced lunch, and many of them come very hungry in the morning. Our breakfast program in the morning, we have an alternative way of doing it because the challenges that I faced when I got here October 30th, are many of the students when they came in with that 1,100 kids, it's hard to serve them all in the cafeteria at the same time. So what we did was we looked at the different various areas around the school that we could have like breakfast on a cart to serve the kids as they come in, because it's really important for them to start their day out with food, because many of them come, like I said, very hungry, and some of them, this may be their only meals that they eat throughout the day is here at school. So what we do is we have our pre-K students eat in their classroom. We have kindergarten through second grade stationed in a hallway with the food on a cart. They hand the food out to the kids, and then we have collaboration areas that they can eat. The middle school students, because we are pre-K through 8th grade, middle school eats in the gym. And again, there's a cart. They hand out the food as they come in, and then they go in the gym and eat. And then our 3rd through 5th grade students cycle through the cafeteria to get their breakfast in the morning. We also have a cart, because we do have some students that come late, and I'm just a big believer that they need to start out their day with a meal. So we do grab and goes in the morning by the tardy table. When they come in, fill out their tardy slip, they get a grab and go, and they go to class. And that's, if they don't eat it then, they can have it for snack later. Our pre-K students eat their breakfast in the classroom, and they do have 2 adults in there, so it's a contained area where they're able to help them open up their breakfast and so forth. It also keeps them from having to walk, because we have a very large campus, so it keeps our pre-K students from having to walk all over to get to breakfast in the morning. So it makes it real easy. They grab their breakfast, they sit down and they eat it in the morning, and then the paras clean up after them and show them. It gives them a little extra time to teach them those skills of opening up the milk, throwing away your trash when you're done with breakfast, and so forth. I bridge the gap with FNS by communication. I think it's key to communicate with your cafeteria managers. And my cafeteria manager here and I have a great relationship, where if I have a need and it's a last minute need, I know we try not to do that, but as principals that happens. I send her an email or I go over and talk to her, and she makes it happen. And an example was, again, when I first got here, we had kids that were not getting breakfast in the morning because they were coming late. So I asked her to do the grab and goes over by the tardy table, and the next day she had it. It was done and moving. So that was an example. And another example would be when we moved some of the kids into the hallways. I had to explain to her why. And also the kids that go into the cafeteria for 3rd, 4th, and 5th, we shut off the hot breakfast at a certain time and give them a grab and go so they're not late to class. I talked to her about that, gave her my rationale as to why we needed to do that, and she had it done the very next day. So I think the key is communicating and giving the reason behind things sometimes, because as people can understand why we're doing things, then it makes it easier to implement it. I think that when students come to school knowing that they're going to get a meal, it does definitely help with their demeanor. An example would be a student came to school this morning and he was not having a good morning and didn't think he was going to get breakfast. So when I interacted with him to find out what was going on, it was because he was hungry. I mean, this is Monday morning. I don't know what he ate last night at home. So being able to provide our students with those opportunities to eat when they are hungry, I think definitely does have a big impact on behavior. It has a big impact on, can they focus in their classroom? Can they do their work? Because when, I think about when I'm hungry, I really don't, I want some food. It's hard for me to focus on what else is going on if I'm extremely hungry. So taking away that barrier to education right then and there is an easy thing for us to do to ensure that our kids feel that their basic needs are being met. And then they can come in and sit in a classroom for a few hours before lunch and learn. Some of the challenges that we had in regards to the alternative placement of the breakfast in the morning was definitely cleanup, because you have 300 kids in a hallway eating breakfast. So we did have to train the staff that were in the hallways on how to train the students on how to throw away the trash, make sure if you spill something, you let somebody know, and so forth. And then our custodians immediately go into the hallways right after breakfast in the morning, right after the bell rings, and they straighten up a little more, sweep, mop if they need be, and clean up any extra things like they would in the cafeteria. with kids. So those challenges were easy to identify and pinpoint. It took a little more to implement because, we're now talking about 3 or 4 different areas than the cafeteria. But what we did was we talked to the custodians and gave them a schedule on how to do that, and they implemented it, and it took a couple weeks to get used to it, but now it runs very smoothly. To that principal that's not sure about implementing the breakfast model, I would say try it. It may not work exactly like it works here at OCPS ACE, of course, because it's a different environment at different schools, but it's definitely worth the effort, because I have seen a difference in my kids, just how they are in the morning, how they start out their morning, and that kind of sets the tone for the entire day. So I really think it's worth a try. And like I said, we weren't able to implement it perfect right off the bat. We had to adjust along and look at the different areas that we needed to adjust. But once we did that, we found the perfect fit. Now it's running very smoothly.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
My name is Delvin, and I'm the Operation Manager for ACE, which is the Academic School of Excellence, K through 8. And
I'm Jennifer. I am the Food and Nutrition Services Lead here, and I have been here since August of 2017. For breakfast, we typically serve around 700 students. We do this several different ways. We have a breakfast line in the cafeteria for our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students. We also have a breakfast cart solely for the middle school students. And then we have a breakfast cart located in the 2nd grade hallway, one in the kindergarten hallway, and one in the 1st grade hallway. Typically on the breakfast carts, we are serving around 500 students per day.
we also offer, for the late students, they offer breakfast up until 9 a.m. At the office area upon entrance.
I think for us, space is an issue because there's no way that we would be able to get 700 students through our breakfast line in a half hour in the morning. So by spreading it out, we can serve so many more students in the same amount of time. In addition to that, the administration here likes to keep the flow of students very regulated so that they're in designated areas throughout the morning. And this allows them to have a place to go where they're being supervised and where they're also eating breakfast and preparing for their day. So they're not crammed into a crowded cafeteria where it's stressful and sometimes you don't get the best meal. They're sitting with their friends in their hallways in their classrooms and they're having a nice quiet meal and kind of getting ready for their day. We have insulated bags so that we can keep our food warm, and most of our students prefer the warm food, especially in the colder months. We found that cereal bars are not as popular, especially when we're offering them with string cheese because they just don't like it, and that's just a preference here. So we try to offer the warm food options as much as humanly possible, but always 2 options on every cart. So we need hot storage and we need cold storage. We need cold storage for our milk and our juice and occasionally our fruit options if it's not a shelf-stable fruit that they're being served. And then obviously our warm items we keep in the cooler bags now. And then everything goes on a cart so that it can be wheeled around campus as needed. Typically what we are using right now is just a plain metal 3-tiered kitchen cart, and we use this because it's easy to steer and it's lightweight and it carries everything that they need. They have their tick sheets, they have their anything else they might need for the day, so jelly or cheese or cream cheese, that sort of thing, syrups, whatever comes with the meal of the day, and it's all there for them. Sure, so all of our serving lines and our serving carts use tick sheets, and that's in a system in which we track how many meals we're serving. So every time we serve a meal to a child, we tick off a number on the sheet, and that's how they're all accounted for later on.
A complete reimbursable meal. The tick sheets are at a secure point of service where the kids receive 1 meal, 1 reimbursable meal, and they're then ticked off. We have 2 versions, point of sales, and we have tick sheets. The tick sheets are usually go along with P2 schools, which is provision to school, CEP schools, which is community eligibility program schools. And we use tick sheets because of ID is not required anymore at that point. The whole school is considered to be meals at no charge.
Certainly, some of the challenges are making sure that we're staffed enough every morning to be able to have 5 breakfast locations working at the same time. So that's something that we sort of have overcome, and it works really well now. It's just a challenge in the beginning. Another issue that I was just actually discussing with some of our coworkers is finding out what the students actually like to eat, because it varies from hallway to hallway what their preferences are. So we're trying to tailor that a little bit to the age group and to, for instance, today they had egg sandwiches and they had bagels. One hallway preferred more bagels, one hallway preferred more egg sandwiches. So we're trying to figure out that nuance so that we're making sure that children are getting what they want to eat and we're getting the most amount of children eating. Not really. They've been very supportive and very helpful with moving our carts around or helping us with coolers. There hasn't been too much impact as far as I am aware. We do have the large trash cans located in the hallways where we do serve breakfast so that they are prepared for that. I'd say for us, for a large school, it's certainly been beneficial just in the one aspect of crowd control. It's helpful to be able to separate your students by their age groups instead of having all of them in one location at the same time. And then at the same time, they're engaged in an activity. They're sitting with their friends, they're having their meal, they're being supervised by adults. So it streamlines the morning process of getting in to the school grounds and getting to where you're supposed to be, while also making sure the most amount of children are eating well before they start their day.
Well, I would ask them that they give it a chance. I would like to have a meeting with the schools that are in question, as far as a school that is successful in the best practices, let the management meet, and as well as let the administration share their success stories as well as what's not working, what is working, because each demographic and details requires different things. So it ranges. You have to see what works best. You have to see how the administration is able to help you, as well as the custodial staff. So it's a whole group effort in being successful in using the breakfast models.
Thank you, Principal Ivory, Jennifer, and Delvin for sharing with us. Up next, we have Linworth Brown, who is an operation manager of both elementary schools and middle schools.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Linworth Brown, the operation manager for food and service for Orange County Public School. I'm going to highlight a few things for best practice, what I do in my area to increase student participation. I could first tell you offhand, we at overall in my area for our CEP school, I'm doing a 91.3% for breakfast and a 96.6% overall for lunch. Some of the things that we do basically, as any program you do in your school, is get everyone aboard in reference to not only the teachers, the principals, parents, and students, but also the custodian, because the custodian is the one who basically taking out the trash. So when you have all the stakeholders involved buying into your program, it makes it more successful. And we was able to do that by incorporating just about everyone involved, even the teachers in the classroom. We basically speak to them about what we're going to do and what are some of the things we can do, and we ask for their help as well. They also promote the program in the classroom. We also have administration go and the morning announcement with taste testing, having principals, assistant principal, administrators go into the media center and taste products that we basically offer for lunch. We find that to be very, very effective. We have students come into the media center as well and taste products. Another thing that we do in terms of increasing our participation, we have some of the school does have cameras and media centers. They come in the kitchen, we invite them for them to take a tour of the kitchen and to see exactly what are some of the things we're doing to make their meal more efficient and much better and more tasty. We bring them into the lunchroom, take them into the back of the house, let them see what the overall production is like, and they basically love it. We also look at carts, putting cart in strategic location. But not only having cart at strategic location, we examine before and after the result of the cart and look at the area, how effective it is, or if we have to move those carts, remove them around to different location, transition point. And I ask all my managers, not only for them to increase participation, but have a meeting, set up a meeting with your principal each month to discuss the data with your principal. And we basically look at the data, share the data with the principal, let the principal informed about what's taking place in the lunchroom in the program. We analyze what are the helps we need, what are the challenges we face, and also we find that to be very effective. And whenever time your principal asks for anything, we basically right ahead. If we said we're going to put cards out there, it must be out there the next day, not just waiting for 3-4 days to put those things out. We was able to do that. And the mindset of our customers is, who are we serving? Remember, our customers are in the house. And so therefore, it's very important to communicate with customers. I have my managers and employees go out in the dining room, speaking with the customers, finding what they like and dislike. We found that to be very, very effective. I remember I went to a school and a student said to me, "Mr. Brown, I like to eat breakfast, but when the bell rings, I can't eat it. So how about getting a grab and go?" So the next day, I let them know we're going to implement grab and go. Grab and go was very effective. The next day, we get grab and go. They take a cereal bar, a juice, and a cheese stick, and they run off to the classroom. We find that the next day, we were able to serve over 200 extra breakfasts. That tells you what really happening. And we also look at other areas in terms of service, customer service. Remember, our customers are in the house. And if they're in the house, they expect to get the very best service. So we basically have every cashier try to find a student name, serve them with a smile, ask them to bring back a friend the next day, interacting with them, talking with them, let them feel welcome. And so therefore, get their feedbacks, what they think about a breakfast program, what can improve our breakfast program. We've been doing that effectively, and we find that it's good. Another thing, again, I want to point out that breakfast is the first meal of the day. And I've done a study in 1997 in North Carolina, Craven County School. We found out that student was visiting the nurse room quite often, absenteeism, and we realized that if enough fuel come to the brain of that child, then that child will be able to pay more attention. It's impact learning, and it's also create less visit to the nurse station. So having breakfast in the morning, as you notice, some schools are sending an announcement when exam coming around and said, "Student, make sure you have a good night rest, make sure you have breakfast." I spoke to a principal and said, we don't have to do that. If you allow my team to make sure we have the student having breakfast in the morning, when time comes for exam, it's not really a work for announcement. And so therefore the principal tried it and the test score definitely increased. So that's also a blessing. We also look at getting student feedbacks. Talk to them. What are their likes and dislikes? And we found that to be very, very effective. We want to make our operation is clean. We want to make it clean, want to make it very inviting when the student come on the line. I even have some of my schools to request to have my dining room painted and cafeteria painted because the customers want to see something new. And we're always constantly trying to find more ways how we can serve our customers. I have some schools that do over 100% breakfast and 100% lunch. And ask me why? All of this come together by having all the stakeholders involved, from the teachers, the custodian, the principal, administrators, students, and employee, parents, everyone involved. I'm myself involved. I normally go and speak as the first line person to speak with the principal, let them know our plan, what we're going to do, how we're going to execute it, and ask for their blessings and give them feedback consistently all the time, what is happening, so they can be very informed. As you know, the principal is basic when they go to meetings. They want to brag about their lunchroom, but I can assure you, I'm quite happy about my area because all of my CEP school meeting and up above expectation. So I'm quite pleased. So if you can take some of these pointers, you have the spreadsheet in your hand, you have the presentation in your hand there, look at it and draw some point from it. Thank you very much. And I wish all of you wonderful success as we have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Linworth. And now it's time for our Q&A. We're asking that you please type your questions into the chat box. We will answer as many questions as possible. If your question is not answered or addressed during this webinar, please email your questions to dmartin@flimpact.org. That's DMARTIN at FLIMPACT.org. You may go ahead and type your question now. Great. So we have our first question from a mobile guest, Javier.
So after 4 years, so the question is, after 4 years of CEP, will we have to reapply? And that will be yes. Um, Keep in mind that every year when we are submitting our April data, that's the data that's being collected. So it really won't change as much, but when it comes to setting up your schools within your state system, that's how you would then define the schools that are being resubmitted for CEP. Second part of that would that entail collecting applications? No, because you'll continue your process with processing direct certification. So as long as you have a strong direct certification process of processing them on a weekly basis, especially during the beginning of the school year, you'll see how important and how effective that becomes.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining us. We're going to go ahead and bring the webinar to an end. Sorry for the technical difficulties that we had, but with a live webinar and, technology as it is, it happens. So we are going to provide you later on with a link in the information so that you can view the webinar later. The email listed in front of you, which says staff@flimpact.org, is where you can send us your email address and we will send you the information regarding the webinar. So thank you so much and have a great day.